Well, of course, I did promise y'all in yesterday's video that we would get an updated personal VR. Now, with tier shifts a month away, I feel like this is as good a time as any to come back to this little tier miss maker. There's definitely a chance, by the way, there's some mons in here, or missing from here. If that's the case, oh well. I've got these mods. We're gonna be ranking them. Should be a pretty fun time. Now, of course, y'all been enjoying the content as of late. I'm gonna need y'all to do a simple thing. If you're not yet subscribed, fix that. Go down, subscribe. That's all you gotta do. It's very, very easy, very, very quick, and I appreciate you very, very much. Now, if you are subscribed, go down and leave a like. Comment down below. I don't know. Comment something down below. Anyhow, we begin with our rankings. Obama Snow. Every time, I feel like Obama Snow is going to end up in B-, by the way. And I'm going to just grab Titan and put him there as well. Snow isn't some, like, super real dominant meta thing, but I do believe that it's at least a matchup fish that you can pull, and it's not the worst. Like, it's definitely I feel like it's more playable than C, is what I'm getting at. Where mainly the thing you're worried about is queuing up into like something like Bronzong plus Water Tauros. That can be kind of tough because then you're looking at a much harder outlook, but Titan does have the coverage to manage it. I believe I've even seen some people talk about not even running an ice, like, okay, I was gonna say not running an ice stab. I meant like Icicle Crash or Ice Spinner. I've seen some people say like Ice Shard is your only ice move and then run like EQ knockoff or like Play Rough knockoff. Just basically going for coverage though, right? And trying to patch up the fact that there are definitely some cores you can run into commonly that are going to give you some issues otherwise. And you just see the fact that you're not going to have a stab move that's above 40 power. You run like maybe like Terra Ground or something or Terra Dark, and that, you know, functions as, you know, now your stab. So put him in B-. Could kind of go either way, really, between dropping it down to C or keeping it here, but I think that's fine. Ambipom. I'm just not going to respect this mon. Araquanid. I'm gonna say Araquanid's B, because I do believe Galvantula is the better sticky web setter, but Arac is like functionally fine enough. It's nothing amazing. I just don't feel like Araquanid is some complete irrelevant wacko that should be like all the way down like here, for example, right? Arcanine. Only because Eternally has won with it recently in a game. At the end of the day, man, you can do some, like, owl stuff with Arcanine. Or Curse with Terra Normal. And if you don't run into Diancie, I mean, frankly, it's not the worst. I guess even something like Shandy could be annoying, but just don't run into Shandy, dummy. No, but it's, like, okay. Gardecuno. Now, this one's an interesting fellow, because we actually started to see this mon tick up in usage again for literally the same set you saw a lot of last gen. The Future Sight set. Because with Banded Flygon, not a bad pairing. Of course, you are completely stonewalled by Bronzong, but hey, just don't face a Bronzong one now. Here, I would probably still say that it's a B- type deal, but with room to go up. My outlook on it is I just want to see it a little bit more first. I've faced it once, it did nothing. The Gardecuno just got... I basically just expended resources to kill it. Anyhow, I think there's more room for it to showcase what it can do. And I haven't seen enough of it to feel like comfortable putting it like, you know, maybe like B+ type area, right? I think the enabling it does is definitely worth respecting, but for now we'll hedge our bets and keep it more down on this end. Avalugg. Mr. Table. This mod's always so hard for me to rate because in theory it still does a lot of the same stuff it used to. I just feel like there's a lot more in the tier now that gives it a headache. I am going to put it in B. I think you just have to run EQ on it more now than you used to, so that you at least can get past things like Hisuian, Typhlosion, and Chandelure. I think the set now you want to run is like Spin, Ice Spinner, or Icicle Crash, really just whichever you feel. Avalanche even's probably fine. Earthquake and then Recover. I think that's going to give you the most mileage. You still don't love Bronzong, but there's going to be something that doesn't go well for you. You may as well at least hit the wall breakers that you let in for free, right? Those are a lot easier. Basculegion. Just the male one, of course. Put an A-. I think Vapo usage trending a little downwards, good for it. And it is also a check to Water Taurus, which is pretty cool. It's still really good under Rain as well. I think Scarf is still like just generally good. And of course you've got the niche over Water Taurus of having Flip Turn. So he's a solid fellow. I still rate him pretty highly, even though he's maybe not like at his apex, which could have been as high up as like here. Still a good, very good mon. And like I said, I mean, Vapo usage going down just is better. Hell, Brute Bonnet usage going so low that it dropped to PU. That also just goes to speak to how good it could be. Bramblegast is obviously still a mon that like is common. And I mean, technically resists water, but it's not really a threat. If your Scarf, you just smack the hell out of it with Wave Crash. So, it's all fine. Belly Bolt. I'm putting him in B-. He could be in B. It's just kind of a mon that I don't love because it's forcing you into these bulkier builds that are just not amazing right now. Functionally, definitely, like, again, honestly, it's also going to have me put this guy up here because I think this fits the meta a little better. And it's going to have me move Lug maybe down to here. This is kind of just a matter of, like, trying to figure out how I feel about the meta and where the mons fit relative. I think Lug could be more up here, but similar to Bellable, I just think you give too many mons too much room. And generally, you're a bit of a pace killer. Maybe you talk about, like, Volt Switch Bellable, and you feel good then. Because you at least pivot. And you just kind of like Umbreon, where you annoy a lot of Pokemon with Toxic Spread. Like, I don't know. The mon kind of just feels like a B- mon to me. Randomly very bulky and annoying to KO. Other games, he just is kind of there. Yeah, I feel it's fine. Bombardier, C rank. I think it just does a lot of weird roll compression, but enough to that value. You know, rocks, knocking, U-turning, ground immunity, dark type. All that's like fine enough. Also, I mean, Bramble is one of the more common spinners. You obliterate that. Talonflame, I mean, you can knock its boots. That's pretty good. Tentacruel, just again, there's so many issues with Tentacruel as a Pokemon. Just view yesterday's video if you need to understand why I'm mentioning that. Bramblegast, I actually put it in A-. I think it's probably the best spinner the tier has. I rated a little more highly than Tentacruel. Reality is the offensive sets are kind of annoying to switch into if you lack an Incineroar. And if you really want to talk like offensive sets, ooh, big Bandlegast. Banded Bramble is like not bad as a breaker. It's definitely a niche option, and you kind of gotta build, I think, in a kind of like those cheese type builds to really get it to work, like something like Tailwind. But it's not bad. It really is not bad. Hisui Brav, I'm just gonna say unranked. I think if you go for the stored power type stuff, you're better off with this guy. And I just do not rate the agility set as a concept worth talking about. Breloom, I'm gonna be honest, I view Breloom as like an A- mon. Maybe it's more A to me. I don't know. I didn't love Breloom when I used it though, but I'm gonna put it, you know, no, I'm gonna put an A just to respect like a lot of the threat that it provides. I think this is a bit more reasonable of a spot than A-, because there are a lot of like variants to Loom, even just if you're talking setups set specifically, and all of them kind of change how good your counterplay is to Breloom. Even Bandit is still fine enough. You know, Technician Mach Punch is really strong. Things like Swords Dance with Aerial Ace can bypass the increasingly common Vileplume. You want to talk about your Toxic Orb Facade stuff, that helps with Glowbro. It has a lot of ways around its counterplay, and Talonflame is not the same level of threat it used to be, so that helps. Big Zong, also A rank. Could argue A+ for it even, but I do think the tier is at least adjusting slightly to Bronzong, which is mostly just a lot of mons running other moves that they have access to that bothers Zong. A lot of it's knockoff, so like things like Pert, less roar, more knock. Tentacruel, knock is always on this mon. That helps, of course. Or is there other things too? Oh, Talonflame, you can run like Flare Blitz on very, very easily. Flygon just always U-turns on it anyway. So all that to say, Zong is still just like really, really good though. Just a very reliable rocker. There's a lot of coverage you could tap into as well to just obfuscate the reliability of some mons switching into it. I appreciate him. Bonnet, I'm gonna be real. I don't see a big reason to run Bonnet. I'm putting it B-. It could easily be B. My issue with it is you just run the other mons. The other dark types do so much better at what you need a dark type to do. Covert Cloak, 3 attack synthesis with Sucker, and there's a good set. I just don't believe that it's, like, that good. I feel like he lacks a bit of a place in the meta. Cinccino. He can go an A-. I'm not a huge fan of Cinccino, but its role on HO is still pretty strong, even with Cloister gone. And I would be lying to you if I said this mon did not make me want to bash my head in with a hammer every time I faced it. It is, like, genuinely very annoying to face as a lead, so there you go. Shandy, also going A-. As a breaker, this mon is very, very devastating. Incineroar is, like, the only true answer to it. And even then, you can Terra Blast Water it if you want to get fancy. And this kind of goes, again, like, Vapo usage going down definitely helps. Umbreon is kind of the most relevant, I feel, of the evolutions right now, if I'm basing it off of usage and what I personally feel like I see most of right now. And Umbreon gets smoked by Fire Blast. So there you go. Copper, B+. Copper is, like, functionally a fine steel type. It's nice. Again, things like Knock Whirlwind are always going to be nice on these mons when you just need a couple things thrown into one mon. So say you're trying to build something with spikes. Well, you got Copper to have both Knock support for that spiker and Whirlwind to phase stuff around. It makes it so things like Cress can't set up on you as well. Makes it so you can also help soften up Bronzong if you've got a sweeper, maybe like a DD Flygon on your team that's going to need Zong kind of chipped away at. So I think in terms of what it offers for the tier right now, it's pretty good. I think I would not be shocked if people wanted to put it like here. I think that's also fine. I'm just gonna say, fitting into the meta, B+ is pretty fair. Cress. I could piss so many people off with where I want to put Cress right now. Reality is, I think Cress, you could put it any of these ranks, even up to here, frankly. And I think you could make a strong argument for any of them. Whether you buy into the rationale, that's always something different, right? Someone could argue Cress is like S rank. I'm gonna think they're delusional, right? I could put Cress B+ here. A lot of y'all will think I'm delusional. That's the fun of some of this talk of mons, right? There's a lot of room for debate. I'm gonna put Cress for now an A-. Maybe I revisit this and I put it like A, higher. But I do believe Cress has some very real issues in this metagame with its setup sets, and I think Scarf sets do struggle as well with... There's real competition for what you're trying to get out of it. Nevertheless, I still struggle to think of a single mon that's more felt in the team builder than Cress. It's kind of one of those mons where I think you have to look at how you're going to beat it in practice more than just how you're, do you have just this mon, right, that beats it. It's really not about having a check that's a Pokemon on your team. It's a matter of having an outlook with your team and being able to understand, how do I beat this mon? This is a bit of an aside, but when I team build, what I'll always try to do, sometimes I don't succeed, but what I try to do afterwards, I just look through the NU builder or the viability rankings thread, and I'm like, all right, how do I, what is my path versus, every mon as I go down the list? Just to get an idea, like, even if I don't say, oh yeah, this Pokemon checks this, I'll say, like, okay, well, what is the game plan? If I can at least think of some way in my head that I feel comfortable taking on that mon, I'll feel chill. And I feel like that's with Cress, where you acknowledge that as a setup sweeper, Cress has some very fundamental issues with sweeping. It's a terastallizing hog, because otherwise you just get toxic a lot of time, or you just lose to some mons without being able to Terra. And two, you really don't like using it a ton early game, like as a defensive mon, because it's very prone to catching stray knockoffs, or if it's Key Berry, to having the berry popped early, and then that just... It's not like that's like the biggest deal, but it's still the same effectively as losing your lefties, or, I mean, you view it through the other lens if you're losing some sweeping potential, because now you don't have that extra stat boost, and you're just easier to pressure. And of course, a lot of mons just in the tier run anti-bulky setup stuff. Cinccino with Encore, Shandy with Trick, Munkidori with Trick, Raja with Whirlwind, Screamtail with Roar. All these things can give Cress issues as well. Umbreon with Toxic as well is another thing. So some Cress like to greed for Terra Fairy, just so Moonblast does more chip. And yeah, Umbreon will say that, or see that, and go, wow, you're dumb, and beat you down. Diancie. I am still Diancie's strongest soldier. This mon is in the A ranks. Yes, I'm also Bronzong's strongest soldier, and I'm Bronzong up in A. Guess what? Zong is not always the steal you face. It's not even always on every team. Dancy is good. Leave me alone. I like Dancy a lot, though. Just still. I feel like those OTR sets, especially in a metagame that does favor offense, they do consistently end up putting in a lot of work. There will naturally be some matchups like the Bronzong one where you slam your head in the wall and you're very just... You don't feel like the mon's doing enough, but generally speaking, I do feel strongly about Dancy in this meta. Ditto! I'm gonna get B- because I do feel like some of the HO nowadays, we see enough terrain and just like, balls to the walls setup spam HO, to where I think Ditto's niche isn't as clear as it had been in the past, where the HO was setup spam. And of course, Diancie even is still on those builds too, so you have to deal with the Trick Room mon. But all that aside, I think Ditto still has a niche. Like, in some of the offenses, it's just not as consistent as it used to be. Dragalge, I'm gonna honestly put it in B+. I do really respect Dragalge a lot. I think the mon is quite good. But I'd be lying to you if I said I had seen Dragalge do much of anything meaningful in the past several months. Now, if I'm going off of what I believe Dragalge can do, it'd definitely be higher. What just happened? Cress, go back to where you were. Like, I could put Dragalge here, I could argue it here. There are sets that I believe Dragalge can be running that are very, very good in the meta. Until we see those sets perform at a reasonable level in the meta, I do have to be realistic. I think Dragalge is probably more like a B+ mod, where I see a lot of room for it to do things, and I'll probably share those secrets with certain people. But until we actually see those sets perform in, like, high level tournaments, top of the ladder, things like that, it's a little bit of a tough sell. Dreadnought. I do think Dreadnought is okay enough in B. Using Mr. PhD's team, I did feel honestly pretty comfortable with Dreadnought. I didn't love the coverage, obviously. Waterfall Crunch, I'm like, oh god, Toxic, please never face me. But I think I had been, like, really souring on Dreadnought for a while, thinking it was like a B-, maybe getting into C-rank territory type mon. I feel a little bit more strongly now about it than I used to. The Dunsparce, I am gonna put it in C. I haven't seen it do enough lately to justify keeping it in B-. Now there's still enough theory mon for me to say, alright, well, I'm keeping it ranked, period. I definitely think there are some matchups you could roll it into where you just devastate your opponent. But it's kind of like Dragalge, where, again, what have you done for me lately? I can only keep them on based on my own opinion / vibes, higher up for so long. So there you go. Espeon, kind of the same thing, where, like, I feel like it's okay enough to stay C. There's some value to Espeon as just a very, very fast mon that, does bother a lot of its checks with Trick and whatever coverage it's got. But otherwise, I mean, I'm not pushing Espeon any higher than this because it's done very little to justify that. Eggialola, I don't even know why it's in the tier maker anymore. Also, Gallade, obviously, it was banned, so we can put it here. Florges is another, like, interesting mon because I vary my opinion on Florges by, like, the given week. So, like, I could have it here, and I probably am going to put it B+. I feel like Florges continues to function in a decent enough way to where I don't want to rate it too lowly. At the same time, it's kind of more like down here. Because you do have to keep in mind all the mons it's contending with are, like Cress, Sylveon, even Diancie to some extent. As a Wish Passer, you still have to do with, like, Screamtail, Umbreon, Vapo. There's a lot of set versatility, though, to it, so it's like I still want to keep it up here. I'll probably put Florges, like, B+ for now. Whatever. I don't feel good about this ranking, but at the same time, Florges offers so many different routes that you could take it as a Pokemon in the tier that I do think putting it relatively, quote-unquote high for maybe how much usage it sees is okay. Flygon. I don't think I need to explain Flygon. It's going to be the only mon in S as well, by the way. There's nothing else worth putting in Flygon's tier. Again, Band-Aid, really good. Dragon Dance, really good. The Eject Pack sets, cool for certain offenses. Scarf, good for when you need it. I feel like there's another set. Oh, yeah, some, those, like, Stealth Rock sets that go, like, Insect Plate or even Lumberry if you want to run, Stone Edge EQU. Those are still good, too. Just a lot that it does, though. I don't need to elaborate more, it's Flygon. Galvantula, put you in, like, B+. Webs is still a strong archetype, though admittedly a little less good with Cinccino around. So, we dropped the Galv down here. And I'm gonna go check on my dogs, I'm so sorry. Yelling at the wind, it would seem. Anyhow. Who was I talking? Galv. Yes, webs are still good. I think just worse with Cinccino because you'll see a lot of like Cinccino lead on those opposing hyper offenses you sometimes run into when you're a Galv user. And I mean, it's just tail slapping you into oblivion. If you want to tear a ghost and set webs, I mean, that doesn't necessarily do much. They're going to tidy up the next turn. They might even just knock you turn 1 in case they want to cover for your Terra Ghost. I think knock 2 shots. I'd have to calc, but I think it does. Galv is still, I think, really, like, I think it's better than Iraq still at supplying webs, and it's still a good webs lead, but yeah. There's at least a little bit that's knocked down. And of course, you know, dealing with the freaking scale shot lead Flygods with DD is never fun. It's really not. So, there you go there, too. Gastro done? I feel like Gastro is always perpetually kind of B rank. At the same time, I'd probably put it more like B minus. This is where I struggle with Gastro, because I think it's very similar to some of these ones like Avalok Belly Bolt, where it just sits around doing very little, but there are still some traits in the meta that make me want to put it higher. I think with Gastro, I could see it a little higher because there's a level of roll comp it offers that, at least as far as B rank goes, I'm kind of not against. But at the same time, I feel like I look at the mons here and I can't really say Gastro is better or necessarily more relevant in the meta than them. Because it's like, if I need water immunity or ground type things, like, I'd rather expend multiple slots, pretty much is what I'm telling you, to get some of the traits Gastro offers than just use Gastro. Which is not a very glowing review. Gligar. Gligar is actually one I've not thought about it, my placement of too much. I feel like Gligar could be like a solid B rank right now. It is really rising back into the metagame as like a Kilo check, a Flygon check, and a good utility mon. It's also just, keep in mind too, how I talked about with Raj, how one of the like genuine benefits to it is forcing knocks on Bronzong. Gligar could do that too, because Zong's gonna want to switch in and try and get, you know, its rock set. Or maybe just because, you know, it's an EQ immunity that blocks Toxic. They'll try and switch to Gligar too. So, that's just another example of fitting well into the meta. You keep momentum up. You're a good spiker as well, which the tier doesn't have a ton of. You're another ground type option, which the tier, it's not like we're short for ground types necessarily. We got Flygon, we got Pert, we got Gligar. Gastro, if you do want to use Gastro, is there. Is there stuff other than those that I'm like okay with using? I mean, I could say Volt Absorb on Kilo if you're just talking Volt Switch blocker traits, but that's not really what I'm going for. I guess those are the grounds. Torterra, but that's, you know, hyper offense specific. Quag is a little more stall specific. All that to say, Gligar is not too bad. Golurk, I'm sorry you have not been used like a single time in recent memory. Goodra, I'm putting in C because I believe Goodra really only has a niche for beating slower paced teams. And I don't value those highly right now. We'll ignore that's what I build a lot of. I recognize I need to stop doing that. Leave me alone. Like, Goodra could be okay in B- too. I'll put a B- because I think at the end of the day, versus offensive teams, you're still going to be able to use it and take like a hit or two from some special attackers. And Draco Meteor is a strong move. And, you know, throwing off Nox and Toxic is never bad. I just don't personally believe that it's got like as high a ceiling as Dragalge still offers. So there you go. Grafaiai. I will put Grafaiai in B, because this mon is the best terrain sweeper available in the tier. It's really all. Grimmsnarl. Nope. Yama. You know what? I'm reformed. Nah, kidding. Hariyama always has a case to be in C. I don't really know whether I think it's C or unrank worthy. I know Eternally was trying some non-belly drum sets on it, and they didn't really do anything. So, I don't know. I'm gonna put it unranked for now because I've not been particularly impressed by it even when I've seen it used, so there you go. Heracross. I'm gonna put Heracross in B for now, only because I'm not entirely sold on it being like, this is where I start thinking you're like part of the meta. I'm not entirely sure. You know what though? I feel like some of these mons are part of the meta though. Like Gardevoir and Gligar, it's just building your case, right? I feel like Heracross is still trying to like really establish itself as more part of like the meta instead of just part of like the meta. if that makes sense to you. But it is a really good breaker. I think just the standard set of Knock, Facade, CC, and Megahorn is always going to be the easiest to throw on teams. Trailblaze has some cool use though as well. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to do much with this mon. And the one issue I feel is you end up wanting all of those coverage moves, so it's harder to fit an option like Trailblaze or even Sword Stance to really break through teams. You also just don't really need Sword Stance though right now. Like, the fat teams aren't really what you're seeing a ton of. So just rolling on Guts is usually more than enough to get your damage going how you need it. Hitmonlee! I think this shit's ass! I don't care that it fits on all these terrains. You're still going in C. Houndstone. The problem is the best spinner is Bramble. The other problem is that Tentacruel can run Toxic. Now you can run Rest Talk to bypass that, so it's not the end of the world. What are our physical attackers we have in this tier? I mean, really, one of the bigger issues is that Flygon is like the best physical wall breaker, and it does not care about Houndstone thanks to Earthquake. I'll throw Houndstone in C just for the hell of it, you know, just for sport. At the end of the day, it's C rank, right? So it's not like these are mons that I think are particularly amazing. I guess you could probably spin block versus some teams. And check some physical attackers like Chinchino and Heracross. And Water Tauros, probably. So that's okay enough as niches. Incineroar, easy A rank. A+, I mean. Yeah, I mean, it shuts down a lot of Pokemon as a defensive answer to them, like Bramble, Cress, Shandy, Hisui type. That's very, very good use. Pivoting is really solid with it as well, just because you frankly do get a lot of free turns just by threatening your Nox versus Pokemon. And slow pivots are always just nice to have around. It's this mon, it's kind of where you see, like, this is effective roll compression compared to, like, Gastro, where I feel like it's not roll compression I want to seek out. No, Incineroars I do want to, because I think that defensively plus offensively, it's giving you so much, it's hard to pass up on. NDD. So this is, like, Psychic Terrain stuff. I'm gonna throw it in C. That's Infernape. Why? How did I grab Infernape there? And then have it, like, way down here when my mouse was, like... I'm gonna put NDD in C, just because I do feel like right now the terrains we're seeing aren't Psychic Terrain, but it is still viable. So, I feel like those structures are still good enough to have it in C. Maybe even B-. Right now I'm a hater, so I'll put it in C. Infernape. Next Pokemon, Inteleon I'm putting in A. Vapo usage going down just helps out Inteleon a lot, and honestly I could even see a case for A+. A lot of your counterplay to Inteleon right now is offensive, and Inteleon's pretty happy if that's all it's got to deal with. You know, Vapo trending a little bit downward. Otherwise, I mean, like, what are your switch-ins to this mon? Melodic isn't super common right now, and a lot of other mons are just basing their ability to switch in on them being a very, very specially bulky Pokemon. And that's not always going to be good enough for Inteleon. So, definitely a mon I rate highly. Iron Thorns. I will continuously put this mon in the A ranks until everyone else catches on. This is a great setup sweeper on literally every offense build. Hyper offense build specifically, but yeah. I rate this mon super, super highly. And I mean, hey, if you want to use the lead set with Spikes and Stealth Rock, you do you, man. I won't stop you. I don't think that set's particularly amazing. I think I'd rather just run something else most of the time. But, I mean, it is generally pretty good at facilitating a Stealth Rock. A Spike, I should say. And in Stealth Rock. So there you go. It's fine for that job, too. Kilowattrel. Definitely in the A- rank, at least. Maybe even A rank. It's a very reliable pivot. It's pretty hard to switch around as well with the losses of Rhyperior and Magnezone from a couple months back. I mean, hey, this is maybe a use case for Gastrodon, but I'd rather try and cope with things like, just, you know, relying on Zong being kind of bulky. Maybe I have a Dansei on my team. Maybe I just tech my Gligar to have more special defense than I normally would. That's pretty much how I would say you're checking Kilo, though, a lot of the time with Pokemon. Kingdra, probably putting B-. Rain, I believe, is still pretty good. But I think the manual Rain stuff hasn't remained as consistent as we would like it to be. Oh, I just slammed into my keyboard. I'm so sorry, y'all. And since Kingdra only really sees use on those builds, it's gonna stay down here. Klefki, probably an A-. I think it's the second best steel type in the tier. So, Yeah. Above Raj, below Bronzong. Good spiker. Magnet Rise usually lets you wall flag on. T-Wave, very easy to throw off as well. It's also nice that as a spiker, it just dunks on Bramblegast very, very easily. Even dunks on Cinccino very, very easily too. You're thinking about like its matchup versus other removal. It's pretty consistent. The only remover that it's not like amazing into is Tenta. And even versus Tentacruel, I mean, what's the Mon doing to you? It's gonna knock your lefties and that's it. You can T-Wave it and then like spam foul play on it if you really want. Like long term, I think you beat Tentacruel, so yeah, it's going up here. Leave me alone. Ludicolo, same rank as King Druka's, same reasons apply. Meloetta, probably B. I think this one has a lot of sets that are kind of cool. They just haven't really propelled it into the meta. But it's kind of a mon like where Gligar, Gardecuno, Heracross, it's like knocking on the door saying, hey, remember me? I think it could become meta. It's going to require some more like experimenting. You know, I've seen Scarf, I've seen AV, I've seen Calm Mind. They all have some at least appeal. I'm just not sure their appeal is enough to get it up there yet. Mian Chao, A rank. You may think it should go higher. I'm saying I'm closer to putting it A- than I am A+. Main issue for Mian Chao right now, there's a return of Vileplume into the tier. It had kind of fallen off for a little bit. Now it's starting to trend back upward. But Mian Chao also just cedes a lot of free turns to mons you'd rather not. You know, if you're running Scarf Shao, hey, have fun letting in Shandies. Have fun letting in Legions. Have fun letting in Cresselia. Have fun letting in Talon to do whatever it needs to do on any given turn. It's not that Shao's a bad mon at all, too, by the way. Like, I probably would not drop it below A, even when I'm saying, like, oh, closer to A- than A+. It does not mean I'm closer to... That doesn't mean I'm close to dropping it. I'm just saying. If I had to pick between only those two ranks, yeah, I'd probably go with A-. But for a Scarfer, I just feel like it ends up being kind of vulnerable. And then if you try to tap into the Breaker sets, I'm just not really convinced that they're better than the other fighters. Like, I think Croak offers a lot more defensively, same with Water Bull. And it's like Breloom. Breloom just has so many different sets you can attempt that kind of puts Shao to shame. Melodic. I've heard so many... I feel like Melodic is like a B rank mon, where the nice thing about it is I feel like it can try and pivot a little more justifiably than Vaporeon can. Because Melodic can still fit, like, Haze on a set if it wants Flip Turn as well. Like, yes, Ninyu are walled by Croak and bothered a lot by Grass types if you drop Ice Beam. But unlike Vapo, I don't have to pick between Flip Turn and Haze. Vapo has to go Wish Tech Scald. You've got one slot left. Milo, really all I care about is Scald Recover. So that's a pretty cool niche. It also means that it's easier to put on those offense builds, like I said, because you're able to get both of those moves in one. Vapo has to pick between, am I Hazer today? Am I Aurora user today? Am I a, Flip Turner today? So it's not so good. Minior, I will admit, using Mono Shell Smash has made me feel Minior is probably viable enough for C. Because again, the bar for C is not very high, so I think functionally Minior does well enough. I say that, by the way, as a mon like Hariyama is in unranked. Yeah, I'm a hater. Mudsdale, there's no reason to use this mon. Alolan Muck. I feel like with Gligar coming back in the tier, it may actually be that Alolan Muck's a bit more of an A- mon again. And like I was talking about yesterday, some of this just comes down to the builds that Alolan Muck goes on. They're still good, I just think Alolan Muck feels a little more exploitable than I'd like it to be. Maybe it is still an A rank mon, I don't know. I just feel like sometimes you end up with a team that Alolan Muck just has so much real estate on, like facing, I didn't want to put it in A-. I feel like that understates its threat level quite a bit. I will keep it here for now. I do genuinely think that there are some matchups where Alolan Muck feels insufferable to play against. You know what? No. I'm put down here. I think here's the reason why I'm bouncing so much between. Right now the tier is very favored to not HO, but offense in general, whether it's bulky offense, generic offense, or hyper offense. These are not the builds that Alolan Muck wants to face. It wants to face things like balance, or just generally bulkier, slower builds in general. A bulky offense, naturally, is one of those. And I do think Alolan Muck has an okay enough matchup into there. That's why we're not putting it down in B+. But for the sake of ranking it beyond that, I think since offense is like the best style in Indy right now, it does end up falling a little bit below where I would otherwise want it to be, because it just doesn't get as many turns to free fire, spread knock, spread poison, do all of that. Monkey Dory puts you in A. Very good enabler of like every fighter, just a very reliable pivot. Trick is super, super useful in this tier. It's a great mod. Pom Pom, it's probably like B+. I still feel like Quiver Pom Pom on any given day, any given matchup can really give you headaches as you try to predict between taunt sets, Revelation Dance sets, and what its Terra type are. It's also like, again, because it can be so devastating as a sweeper, it's pretty nice to have in the meta right now with Flygon being super, super strong. And, I mean, still being a fighting type check is really valuable, so there's that too. It's just not as consistent as it used to be, because I think where it used to be that the opponent of the Pom Pom user had the biggest headaches deciphering the set, I think now the Pom Pom user also has some really big headaches deciding on its set, because you do have some pretty bad matchups depending on what you pick and what you don't pick. Without, you know, like Terra Steel, you're worse than things like Umbreon. Without Taunt, you're also worse than those, so like you want maybe not Terra Blast, you want like Revelation Dance, like Ground maybe. Wait, well, let me go back there. I just misspoke terribly. You want to have like Taunt or you want to be Terra Steel, but you're usually both of those on the same set, because that's how you help versus Umbreon. On the flip side, you also want to have your ground type moves, otherwise you cede free turns to a lot of other Pokemon like Iron Thorns, like Diancie. And that also is pretty bad, so I don't know. All this to say, I feel like it has a lot of issues picking its move slot. Let's just leave it there. Earthworm. Earthworm is like the quintessential C rank mon, where I think it does some stuff that Bronzong can't do. Obviously, it has spikes is the big one. It's also literally recovering HP from ground moves. But I think as a steel type, it's kind of fake because the special bulk is... like, if you invest, it's good enough. I just don't think it's, like, so good that I'd put it up in B-. I can see a case for it, but... again, I'm a bit of a Bronzong truther, so I just can't buy into Worm. Palisade, kind of the same deal, where I think, like, there's some stuff it does that's cool enough. Croak countering is the biggest, so there is always a niche for it. But beyond that, look at our other fighters. I mean, there's Mian Xiao, sure, but y'all know how I feel about Xiao. You gotta deal with things like Water Tauros, you got things like Breloom, Heracross even. Actually, you know what? I've spoken myself into believing it's B-. There you go. Good over checking a lot of the other ones. My only concern is the Flygon calcs. Not sure I like them, but whatever. Palmot. He's good enough for C. Leave me alone. I will continue using my Scarf Palmots and ice punching your Flygons. There's nothing you will do about it. So, you can keep on your little cope train. I'm gonna keep Palmotting. And we're gonna be all happy with that. But, yeah. I mean, I think that Palmot, is pretty bad, but... Revival Blessing's kind of cool. Coverage it has good enough. Bothers a lot of Pokemon. It's like the typical reasoning you'd put them on that's not like super good. Near the top, right? Or even just like, not near the top, near the bottom, right? There's at least like enough traits that there's a conceivable reason to use it. Because there's some other, no, literally the opposite. There's no other mon that can do like its combination of tools. And Palmot does them at least effectively enough in my eyes to justify a ranking here. Concursion goes B- because I believe, like I was saying earlier, I think it's grassy, or earlier in yesterday's video, grassy terrain, then electric terrain, then psychic terrain. So B- is fine for Concursion. It just enables the terrain. PZ, where is PZ? Where did you get dropped? Yes, unranked. A- mon. It's a breaker. It's quite good. A lot of set versatility as well. If you're going like plot or agility or specs or scarf, there's a lot of good options. The only reason I don't put it any higher, I think getting it on the field, unless you're always using like these heavy volt turn teams, isn't always going to be the easiest. And you do have to predict pretty well with it. Like, I do not want to keep spamming Shadow Ball if that is not the best move, but I want to keep using my my normal type moves. There's probably a use case, or not a use case, a case for it to be an A rank. I'm just not sure that it's like so good as a breaker that I put it here above a lot of these other mons that just do more. Like, do I really think it's better than Shandy? I don't know. Like, maybe Shandy's just also an A rank mon, but I gotta put PZ down here because I think these two are very similar in terms of their overall function. The argument, I believe, for PZ to be an A would have to do with the fact it runs those speed booster sets and does them quite effectively, or you can just run Scarf for, like, you know, Trick Scarf. And those end up being pretty passable as well. Quillfish. Probably just put it with all the other Rain dudes. I think you could argue it to be B above them, but I just don't feel like Rain is so prevalent in the tier that it justifies ranking the individual pieces in that type of manner, you know? So he goes there. Quag, B-, because I'm just not a huge Stall fan. I can see Quag up here, though. I think either's fine. You know what? No. I will put Quag in B, I think. I don't think Stall is amazing, but it is a fixture of those builds. And if you're going to use full Stall, I mean, you're using Quag. He's fine there. That's fine. Raikou! Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put Raikou in B-, not because I think Raikou is any good at all in this tier, but because other people like Raikou enough to keep using it, and I'm willing to acknowledge I may just be incapable of piloting this single Pokemon. So you go there, buddy. Have fun. Registeel, I'm actually gonna put like the same rank as Raj. For a while, I was starting to think Registeel was like so bad and bad is in quotes here, because it's not that it was a bad mon. But it was just so not worth using to me on the teams I wanted it on. Every time I used it, I was like, oh my god, this just does not fit the team at all. Please, God, save me. But I've seen enough usage of it where it does genuinely exert a pretty strong level of influence in its games with just Iron Defense stuff. Or even just having EQ and being kind of annoying to pivot around. Because your traditional mods that would stunt on it no longer really do. And as I mentioned before in previous videos too, like Iron Defense Registeel does legitimately just vibe check certain offenses so hard because they go too hard on the physical sweepers, so your Iron Defense stuff just shuts them down, and your special attackers end up just being ones that it checks, like maybe PZ and Cress, and Diancie even so. That rounds out to about B+. Rhydon, yeah, dude, no. Well, that's Snorlax, but also, yeah, no. Rotom Heat. Rotom Heat, I think, is fine enough in B. I'm still waiting for it to catch on. I think the fact that Terra Fairy walls Flygon is pretty cool. Other than that, though, I've not really seen much of a reason to care about this Pokemon. It's a good pivot. Like, it basically is. It's a good utility mon. It is going to burn ground types, and it is going to pivot with Volt Switch. Which honestly makes me feel like it should probably be like B+ at least. I'll put it B+ for now, because I do believe that Rotom Heat is more of the meta, or more in the meta than a lot of these other mons. Even though, by the way, again, like mons like this even, I feel like a lot of these could be B+ mons. You could definitely argue them up into there. I'm just waiting to see a little bit more tournament usage with them in it to help, like, solidify it for me. But I'm also willing to just agree with what Danny says and go, yep, Rotom Heat moment. Rotom, on the other hand, I just have not seen this mon in eons. I think there's probably still something to it with a Trick Scarf set. Like, at the end of the day, the most common ground type, you just blow up with Leaf Storm anyway. But I don't know. I'm starting to wonder if it's even worth ranking. Lazzle, I've not seen this do anything in the tier in eons, so I'm sorry you're unranked. Sandaconda, I don't even know what you're supposed to do. Alolan Sandslash, maybe there's some roll compression angle, but I don't know. Alternatively, maybe it's viable with both, like all three run? I don't know. I feel like, I saw shit, I think it was Shinjinir he ran Snow? I don't even think he had Alolan Sandslash. I think he had like Bear Tick. I'm putting C. Fight me on that. Sceptile. I'm honestly not even sure it's worth running on the terrain builds at this point. I've seen a lot of people end up just wanting other mons than Sceptile. Like, you have Grafaiai, Hitmonlee for your Unburden, and then you just sort of like a whole bunch of other shit in your last slots. Sceptile's just, I don't know. I think at this point its coverage is just too big of an issue for it to get over. Tentacruel, probably B+. I do really like using a Tentacruel. I use it a lot. The issue for it is there's so many Pokemon that exploit it. You just don't have the move slots to get this mon to be functional in every game. There's too many issues it runs into. Like, you're either hardwalled by, like, Croak, hardwalled by Plume, hardwalled by, like, Water Tauros sometimes even, which you're supposed to kind of check, but you don't really. Kind of just... yeah, like I was saying, too many issues for it. Where I feel, like, really comfortable putting it into the A-, where, I mean, based on how much I use it, I feel like I would want to put it higher up. I just... there's a lot of things that give it issue. I don't feel comfortable putting it too much higher. Scrafty, nope, have not seen this mon do anything in Eons. Sorry. Screamtail, I think it's probably still okay in C. Good mon against the bulky setup. It still wish passes. Maybe the Gallade ban really does take away all of its use case, but I'm willing to give it a little bit longer before I nuke it off my personal rankings, right? Glowbro. He's very good. I could see A+. I could see A. I'm gonna say A for now. I do think this mon, though, has an insane amount of potential in this current tier. With all of its sets, with how annoying it is to pivot around, with Gallade also now being gone, that was one of the better mons to try to brute force through it. That's no longer an option. And I say Gallade, too, because, yeah, to be your physical wall, you try to check the physical attacker, but that's why it's so, that's why Gallade was so cool. Because you drew in Glowbro. And there was a lot more room for the Glowbro user to accidentally come in on a Psycho Cut, take well over half, and then have to just immediately switch out. That no longer is a big worry. I could honestly see an A+ for it, too. Because you check Breloom, you check this, you check the Tauroses. Yeah, you know what? Screw it. I've talked myself into it. The only issue, of course, Flygon, but you live and you learn. Smeargle, I will keep putting this mon in C rank till I die. I think Smeargle as a lead is just fine. I will set my webs, I will set my hazards, and I will be KO'd, but that's all I need to do. Raptor, it's like fine in B-. I've liked using Scarf Raptor. Definitely awkward to support with building, but not too bad. Pert, easily an A rank. Easily an A rank. I would argue this is my favorite rocker to use, other than Bronzong. It's those two mons at the top of the tier for my stealth rocking needs. Just a very reliable mon. It's so bulky, too. Like, you basically check every physical attacker at least once, which I really appreciate. And having knockoff in this meta is really good, too. Just like we talked about yesterday. You soften up the Bronzongs, make it easier for some of your other Pokemon to deal with them. And a lot of time you'll even just see Pert plus Monkey. Very, like, easy way to quick start up a Volt Turn team. I mean, they're just two of the best pivots in the tier. I mean, what else can you say? And they end up supporting a lot of the similar Pokemon, which I really like. Sylveon, I'm going to put in A- as well. I still think Specs is pretty strong. I mean, again, these are two mons that do genuinely support Specs Sylveon really well, so it's a good example of how that kind of build can manifest. But Specs is really good. You've got coverage for, like, some of the steals anyway. Some of the steals is Bronzong. It's just Shadow Ball. Incineroar is a pretty common special wall as well, and it doesn't even check you. So that's also a pretty big benefit. The only conundrum I really have with Spec Sylv is I compare it to some of these other nuclear, or just like bomb type of special attackers. Shandy and Porygon Z really come to mind. And the biggest issue for them is, or biggest issue for Sylveon compared to them, is you don't have Trick. So that is a drawback, but not the worst. And I do like Roar as well on some of these support sets. It's just a cool way to catch some of these like Sub-Terra Steel DD Flygons off guard. Talonflame, although I think it's fallen off a bit, I would still put it up in A+. It just still offers too much compression for certain builds for me to like really put down. And again, checked. Kind of, technically you could say checked if you're a Brave Bird. So, I mean, come on, man. Water Tauros. I'm gonna put Water Tauros up in A. I'll do that. I was thinking about A+, but I'll put it up in A. Set versatility is huge, and Intimidate means you soft check some other attackers as well pretty decently. Usually you have to be a response to them, like you're not hard switching in. But if I need to use this as like a means to check Flygon even, it's not the end of the world. You're actually dodging a 3-shot from Banded Flygon. So that's honestly just kind of going to show how good it can be, right? Like, that mon is a demon and you could actually avoid that? Ooh. Very good. Slide Blaze Breed, I actually do think is good enough to also be in B+. Helps with Vileplume being a rising star once again in the metagame, like we were saying. But then you compare it to Incineroar, you don't even have to worry about the occasional Wisp Incins. Or even just getting burned by a stray Flare Blitz. Like, let's be honest, that will happen sometimes. So that's cool. Bit better of a Brambleghast answer too, because you're not weak to Power Whip. So that's something I appreciate. Is there any other specific reason I liked it as an alternative? I guess... No. I mean, so I guess you kind of are a little better into Talon as well, because you're immune to Wisp, but Talon has Brave Bird regardless. It's still, like, genuinely worth this higher ranking, despite Water Bolt being better. Like, I think they both function very, very well. Wacky. Wow, what's that? The best terrain setter goes above the other two? I'm shocked. Yeah, grassy terrain has remained at least, like, viable enough in my eyes to go up in B. So there you go. Torn! I was going to put B+. Now you may wonder, Rabia, what about Rain? And you saying you're just going to put them all down here. Torn has shown a propensity for... Not propensity. Torn has shown an ability to go on other teams. You could run Plot, you could run Pivot, you could do Tailwind stuff even. There's actual, like, use for it otherwise, and it's been consistent enough to see, in my opinion, this ranking. So there you go. Torterra. Whoopsies. There we go. Torterra, probably also B+. I don't love it as a Shell Smasher because it just is really slow even at +2. A lot of Scarfers are still faster. And of course, Bronzong being in the meta now hurts it a bit. But you can get past Bronzong and conveniently Brambleghast too. If you want to tech something on like Crunch or the old Terrablast Ghost we even saw a little bit back when Tort originally dropped. So yeah, there are some issues for it, but I don't think they're deal breakers. Toxicroak. Pretty obvious up here in the A ranks. It's just way, way too good of a breaker to justify being put slower. And much like Aquatoros, you get a lot of useful defensive prowess from it too, just because of dry skin. I'm gonna be honest, yeah, being able to block this thing's Wave Crash and Intellion's Hydro Pump, it's worth a lot. At least to me, man. So there you go. Toxtricity, I'm probably going to just continue putting this mod in B+ forever, because I just don't feel like it's ever gotten to the point where it's, like, such a threat that it gets put up into the A ranks, but it's always good enough to where you got to keep it in mind when building. Specs Tox is super, super hard to deal with, because really, you got to get, like, a prediction or two right, and then the mod runs through a team with Boom Burst repeatedly. And even, like, Shift Gear and Scarf are kind of cool. They do patch up certain issues with offense, and I think they're not the worst to support. A lot of the time, it's just heavy knockoff spam is needed, but we got a lot of good knockers in the tier, so there you go. Serena, I'm probably... I really don't like Serena right now. I think Brambleghast is a lot better, and I would also use Tentacruel a lot more before Serena. It's not that the mod is bad. I just think she's awkward to get to use, because you want to run bulkier sets so that you're actually a Flygon check. But the bulkier sets aren't that good in a lot of the other attackers. They still have to do a Glowbro and Talon being very common, which you can knock. Talon, at least. Glowbro doesn't care that much. And it's like, okay, well, if I run offensive sets, I'm not breaking, really. Like, I feel like you still don't do enough as a breaker, so... Maybe it could still be B+, because at the end of the day, it's a spinner in a tier without a lot of options. I'm gonna just be honest, I'd rather run boot spam. So, there you go. Vaporeon, A- just because the tiers continue to adapt to its presence. So it still is, like, genuinely quite good, but not, you know, like, A rank, A+ rank like it used to be. You know, again, Croak usage being super high is the big thing. Breloom, even though being quite good, is another thing that's not really an adaptation, but still something worth keeping in mind. Those are really the two big things. Even, like, Restockalolonuk being, like, semi-common for the builds it does find itself on does help further, you know, clamp down on this thing. Tentacruel as well is, like, it's not the best answer, of course, because you get Scald Burned and you're sad, but you can threaten Toxics. You could knock its item, which either you knock off Boots, and it makes it easier for Spikes to overwhelm Vapo, or you just get rid of the lefties, and now there's, you know, 2-hit KO ranges that are easier to attain when you have your hazards up. Hisui Type, I think it's roughly as good as Shandy, a little worse because no trick, but The speed is pretty nice to dodge some of the speed ties Chandelure faces, and I think there's at least a couple mons in between them, like Croak, that it is good to have the speed advantage on. Like, yeah, you're gonna have to Terra to avoid Sucker Punch, but that's okay. You're also, in some ways, a little better in Incineroar because you can Focus Blast it, so you don't have to dedicate Terastallization for that, which is helpful. Umbreon, probably also put this A-, because Umbreon, like we mentioned earlier, yeah, it's kind of just a passive blob that sits there, but like Vapo, it's a passive blob that sits there and still's like kind of scary to face. Kind of like Vileplume, where Vileplume is just really annoying and aggravating to deal with. Umbreon having Foul Play Toxic does take away a lot of the potential for abusing it. So ones like even like Croak that live rent-free in Vapo's head, Umbreon has Foul Play to smoke this thing's pack, and then you could just Terra Poison the next turn if you really wanted. Venusaur does not get used. Vileplume. I'm actually willing to put Vileplume up in like A. And I get it. Some people say, hey, this is too early to jump it back up to A. Fight me. Water Bowl is everywhere. This mon is also good at just denying the Alolan Muck things. Now, I will say, this is also a mon where you could put it like here and say, well, kind of like Muck, the builds it fits on, you're still trying to really justify those. I feel like Plume is maybe one of those mons where you can get away with it on offense as like a 2-mon core, defensive core type thing. And it's not as bad. For what's worth, I'll leave it an A- for now. But I do think it's rising. Stock's going up. Maybe it ends up here later. And in Wo-Chien, I've not felt super strong about Wo-Chien in a while. I think since Bro left, but I think still, like, ostensibly it does a lot of the same, so I'll keep it B. And then as we look here, the only question I have is A- too big? For the sake of better visuals, and for the sake of being a hater, I'm kidding. We'll keep A- like this. I think it's a pretty decent VR, though. I think you could argue some mons up higher. Like, you could say Xiao was still A+, right? I think it'd be a bad take, but you could definitely say it. You could say Zong's up here. You could say Monkey's up here. You could say Pert even is up here, if I'm being honest with you. But I don't mind this for now. Yeah, actually, no, I do like this. And it's pretty reflective of the tier for now. And yeah, no, it showcases as well a couple risers. Like Glowbro getting a lot better. Water Bowl surging up in usage, of course, too. Monkey establishing itself as one of the premier threats. All the fighters you see just through here being like, yes, I will be the next great fighting type. It's good to see. I hope y'all enjoyed. Y'all got an hour-long video, and remember, when I said when I get 9K subs, I will give y'all a movie-length video, so hey, get me there by the end of this month, or I cry. Anyhow, see ya!